Who am I? I'm an English expatriate living in Belgium for the last 19 years. I've taken on Belgian citizenship. I'm an engineer by background, as a mechanical engineer. As I said, I'm an Englishman by birth, but even before I finished high school, I'd lived in 4 different countries, including North Africa, Cyprus, Germany. But most of my youth, if you like, was based in Bedfordshire, just north of London, although I went to university in the northwest of England. I chose to study mechanical engineering. Originally that was because I wanted to do design work. I kind of enjoyed creating things, drawings, but I quickly found out when I was there I wasn't a very good technical drawer, but I was good at maths, I was good at the engineering, so I kind of switched direction and I studied pure mechanical engineering. I had an affinity with things. I've always been a tinkerer, taking things apart, and that kind of always leads to an understanding about how things work. And I was drawn originally to the conceptualization, like the drawings and making things. But as I said, I found out that I was much better at calculating and doing the predictions. So that's finally where I ended up. I was headhunted. I was working at the time in Germany for a consultancy company very much like the Bayard Partnership. And via one of my network contacts, they told me that there was a full-time position available at Toyota Motor Europe. It was a good position, it was a good opportunity. So yeah, I came to work full-time at Toyota Motor Europe in Brussels. I'm a sportsman, I'm a passionate cyclist. I started cycling back in 1982. I was doing competition by 1984. I did that for 15 years, and since I retired from competition, I now just cycle for fun. That's what I do. The other thing I do is I like to write. I just write stories, just fantasy stories that come into my mind, and I'm just about finishing the first volume of a trilogy, it's been fun to create. In life, friendship. That's one of the key elements. I make a distinction a little bit between the people I know and the people who are my friends, really my friends, the people you count on, the people who count on you. And those people, there's not many of them, but those are the things I cherish the most. That they need to be cared for and nurtured. And if I have time, then I like to spend it with my friends. Ah, that's an interesting one. I thought about that one beforehand, and the answer is actually ties. I don't know if you can see here, but I have a slightly special tie. This is one of my favorites. I have a collection of almost 100 ties. It started because when one of the first things I did when I left university was worked for a kind of consultancy company, and there we had to face up to customers. And I said, okay, if I have to wear ties, I want them to be special, colorful, lots of energy. And then throughout a 20-something year career, I collected ties whenever I saw something special. I can tell you that this one came from the Cologne Christmas market. So each of the ties that I have has a memory attached. So yes, I have a wardrobe with 100 ties in it. I left university and I went straight into the automotive industry. I started driving heavy trucks with DAF, and that was with the UK affiliate. Unfortunately, they went bankrupt very soon. And then I went through a series of small jobs doing different parts of the automotive industry in tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. And then I ended up in a company called Hotel Whiting, which was a specialist in design and development services. And there I was testing and development engineer, and which was a lot of fun. It was a small company, and we just did everything from developing and testing full vehicles to testing gearboxes and seats. So that was 5.5 years, which was the early part of my real kind of career, if you like, of getting involved in projects. I went there from being just a development engineer to being a team leader. And then we chose the decision as a family to try to leave the UK and to experience Europe. As I said, in my early childhood, I'd already lived in 4 countries. So I wanted to try to do the same for my children. My daughter was just 1.5 years old. We left the UK, we sold everything, we moved to Germany. There I worked for another consultancy company based in Cologne. And they sent me to work on the production line in a factory, a mass production factory for cars. And that was a real eye-opener, really working on the production line, managing their problems, managing the suppliers, making sure the quality was okay, really understanding firsthand the link between the design and the production and the customer expectations. So I did that for 2 years, and then I was headhunted from there into Toyota as a department manager. And there I went from managing a small department. The department grew as Toyota in Europe grew. And then after 8 years of managing a department of engineers developing brake systems, I went into program management for total vehicle. So instead of looking at just one small part, I was looking at the total vehicle. I did that for another 8 years. And then stepped out completely, did a completely different change in my career. I set up my own company. I started working with the Bayard Partnership. And now I'm a technical writer. I'm still a project manager, but I'm now working in IT. I'm working in security compliance and security, IT security. There was a wonderful project in south of Spain in a city called Mojaca, which is close to Almería. It's at the end of the Sierra Nevada. It's a very famous place in the automotive world because it's the last real desert in Europe. And because it's on the south coast, you can go from cool area at sea level up to 1,000 degrees and 1,000 meters altitude and very dry. So for testing brake systems and the noise that brake systems can make, it's ideal. I was in charge of running that entire project for Toyota Motor Europe, and it involved a fantastic team because I was working with our drivers, I was working with the Japanese, I was working with a consultancy company from Germany, I was working with the local Spanish drivers. I was traveling once every 2 months. I spent 2 weeks in the south of Spain, which is never such a bad thing to do. I was driving. It was just it was a total wonderful experience. It lasted for about 1.5 years. That was a lot of fun. I'm currently working at DHL, and it's the very specific part of DHL that manages the flights between intercontinental destinations. So it's not the people who deliver door to door. It's in the IT department, and I was recruited specifically to be a technical writer because they needed to have standards and procedures in place that deviated somewhat from the corporate standards because they were so unique in being the people responsible for the airlines. That has since morphed into being a team lead for a couple of other young consultants. And also I'm doing the program management, because not only am I writing some of the standards and developing the standards, but they also want me to manage the compliance to those standards. And then very recently we have the NIS regulation, which has come into force. So I'm now tasked with managing the compliance for NIS. One of the key elements, I think, I'm a mechanical engineer. As a background, I think most of the other Bayardiers are IT specialists, which means that the concept of lean manufacture, the concept of taking products from design phase into manufacturing phase, that's where I spent a lot of my career. Understanding physical component needs, that's also something special. If I link that back to one of the previous questions, which is what was the favorite one I did, the elements of the favorite one were really the fact that I was working with a very good team. We had control of the project, so we were setting the targets, we were setting the budgets, we were managing the achievements and the milestones. So being in control and having a wonderful group of people, and if I took that to the next extreme, it would be that it would be some kind of mechanical project again, because I have more affinity with mechanical things than I do with some of the IT projects. I think that I rely on trust, because I don't micromanage. That's not my style. I like to have discussions with people and to get an honest opinion. I don't like to think that I rest on my ideas being the best. So having an open discussion and trusting that people are giving me their best really is what I look for in because you can't do anything on your own. You have to work as a team, and if you can't trust your team, you're not going to make progress. Wow, I thought long and hard about this question. The first thing I notice, everybody notices, digitisation. And everybody wants to put in place some kind of digitisation because it's going to be a lot of cost saving and efficiencies, etc. But I see, if anything, a negative side to this, which is that you're separating people from the product. Or separating the engineers from the customers and the customers from the products, because everything passes through this digital interface and there's not so much contact to people anymore. When I was working on the production line in the car factory, talking firsthand to the people who had to assemble it, when I was working for Toyota looking at the total vehicle, we spoke directly to customers. We sat next to them in the cars, we asked them how they felt and what was their perception, and that I see drifting away in some direction. Big data is being used to analyze customers without actually ever talking to customers. Toyota, DHL, who I'm working for now, they have their I Love IT Day, and for the last 2 years that I've been working for, that I Love IT Day has been focused on connecting to the customers. I think certainly a company like DHL recognizes that you cannot be separated from your customers, but I do still see that as a trend, and maybe it's also a generational thing that comes in with the millennials are very happy on social media. They're not so easy on real interactions, but I do sense personally a divide opening between the users and the developers. Again, there has been many times in history where something new has come along and you've had an explosion of different types of solutions. And then some of those die, and you narrow back down to a fairly narrow band again of what works and what really solves the problem. I feel that we're in that kind of situation again with this new communication technology. We're in an explosion, it's confusing, but we will come back to something that works, and a lot of some of these startups and these ideas will fade away. And that whole process of new technology, explosion and convergence, I think will happen, but it will happen more and more and more quickly. So you will have a new technology, explosion, convergence, and that whole cycle will get quicker. That's what I see as the future. What that will be and how that will look, I couldn't tell you. I've probably got more chance of winning the lottery than I have of telling you what that will look like. But it will change, and I think it will be, it will follow from a historical trend, the same pattern, just faster and faster. Good, another good question, because I could never predict that I will be doing IT security and compliance. So I wouldn't predict what I'm going to be doing in 2 years from now. What I hope I'm doing is learning. What I hope I'm doing is broadening my experiences, and most of all, enjoying the people I'm working with. So that would be a kind of vague answer, but that's probably the best I can give. One thing that's come up over and over again, it's taken a long time as a philosophy to kind of embed itself in my mind. And having worked in multiple different countries and with different cultures, and now having directly changed my career direction, the one thing I can say is that certainty does not exist. You have to become more and more comfortable with dealing with uncertainty. You have to build your picture of what you know and make a decision based upon what you know now, move forward, and live with the consequences of your decisions. I studied a little bit the communication equation, and of all of the parameters that can go into it, one of the key fundamentals is that what you say is not what is necessarily understood at the other end. And that's the same with certainty. What I think is certain can be completely misunderstood by somebody else. So you need to take time, you need to talk to somebody, and to try to make sure that you both move forward together in the same direction.